Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves here with your week 2 fantasy recap. And my God, do we have a ton to cover tonight. That's why I'm a little later than scheduled, because I could not stop packing the show sheet. We got humongous injuries. It was a devastating, bloody Sunday of a massacre with injuries. Saquon, Barkley, torn ACL. Christian McCaffrey out 4 to 6 weeks. Cortland Sutton, another torn ACL. Huge injuries to unpack. Tons of risers and fallers in light of everything. I know Monday Night Football is on the TV now, but if you're here live, get any questions you want answered after we cover all the news. But we got to dive right in at the top with the humongous injury news. Saquon Barkley, torn ACL, done for 2020, and that is a killer for the consensus number 2 overall pick. There's not a whole ton of backup plans right there on the roster. Dion Lewis seeing 10 carries, 20 yards, gets into the end zone, but that is horrible. They're working out Devonta Freeman, so yay. This line is so bad. It's going to be a committee no matter what happens at this point. The overall offense looks in shambles. I imagine they just completely turn it over to Daniel Jones and just see what he can do. Ultimately, I don't want any part of this backfield. I'm looking elsewhere for my backup plans, and one of those is going to be Mike Davis, because also at the top of your drafts, number 1 overall pick, Christian McCaffrey, also out 4 to 6 weeks. Not a full season like Barkley, so not quite as devastating, but still a healthy chunk, a nice quarter to third of your fantasy season is going to be taken up by this injury. Mike Davis is by far the most immediate priority add if you own Christian McCaffrey. Comes right in, sees 8 targets in the fourth quarter, Mike Davis does, racks up 80 yards on them. Should be the immediate plug-and-play guy. There's no one else there. So ultimately, Davis is your direct backup, but there's plenty of other areas to look here on the waiver wire. My number 1 option, even above Davis, especially if you don't own Christian McCaffrey, would be Jerick McKinnon. And why is that? Well, Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman both out for at least week 3, which launches McKinnon right up to the stratosphere, right up to the moon here for fantasy. Now, he shouldn't be on your waiver wires, but he's only 22% owned right now. And he's going to by far get the lion's share of work. Maybe Jeff Wilson gets worked in. I've seen that narrative. Shore probably steals a vulture touchdown here and there, but it's going to be the McKinnon show. He's already the primary third down back, came right in, lit it up, had a nice 31-yard run on 3rd and 31. The fucking Jets, what a joke. But this is what we're waiting for. We've been hyping up McKinnon all preseason as the must pick in round 12 and 13 in case he ever became the starter. Now he's going to finally get his shot. Now, Mostert has looked fantastic. I don't think it's just an automatic, McKinnon looks good and then Mostert goes away. It's only a mild sprain for Mostert. But I first look for Jerick McKinnon as a replacement plan for, again, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley being out. Also, Mike Davis comes right there in number 2 at only 1% owned. So he's more likely to be out there for you, and definitely an immediate slide in for Christian McCaffrey. Immediate slide in. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but 8 catches again in the fourth quarter. But I also look to McKinnon. I look to Darrell Henderson at 30% owned right now. Seem to take over that Rams backfield as a potential play. Otherwise, maybe you go for the Devonta Freeman stab, 13% owned, likely to get picked up there, and maybe he carves out some steady volume. But again, I'm not looking for a replacement directly in the Giants backfield if I don't have to. I'd much rather find it with these other options. I mean, hey, maybe Josh Kelly's somehow still out there in your league. Invite me if he is, but that guy's a touchdown machine in an offense that is certainly rising under Justin Herbert there. So I like him. And last replacement plan potential is Myles Gaskin. I mean, certainly, again, nothing sexy here for the Dolphins, but he has been the snap and touch leader by a long shot. Myles Gaskin has been. And so you got to give him at least a slight look, because this offense has had tough matchups and is still putting up points. Gaskins goes 7 carries for 36, hauls in 6 of his 7 targets for another 36. So 72 total yards. Yeah, Howard is the vulture, but this guy is the clear snap and touch leader in this backfield for 2 straight weeks. So it's not necessarily, at this point, it's not a fluke. It wasn't just a 1-week mirage. I really think Myles Gaskin, if you're desperate, is yet another spot, only 15% owned, that you can look for your Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley emergency fill-in plans. Again, another huge injury, though. Courtland Sutton, just as he returns to play, goes and tears his ACL, making a tackle on an interception nonetheless. And so the aftermath just directly, until we can talk about, backup plans in a second, but Noah Fant and Jerry Jeudy time, definitely both skyrocketing up the big board rest of season. You can find that at rotostreetjournal.com. Look for the rest of season big board there. Both those guys get a nice bump up. In particular, I really like Fant. I mean, I already bumped him up into my top 7 tight ends last week. And then Noah Fant goes off yet again this week in a much tougher matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, goes off 57 yards and a TD, but for tight ends on 4 catches, 5 targets, that's legitimate, especially against the Pittsburgh secondary that shadows tight ends often with Minkah Fitzpatrick. We saw them take Evan Ingram out of the game, but Fant was running all over the place after the catch. He's now up to 10 catches, 136 yards, and 2 scores on the season. And again, not in the easiest of matchups. He, to me, becomes the clear benefactor here. Jerry Jeudy also gets a slight bump up here. The target share should go up. And I think you got to feel decent about that. Even with Drew Lock also going to be out, Jeff Driscoll wasn't useless last year when filling in for Matt Stafford. Now the backup here for Drew Lock averaged 8.2 average depth of target. So not horrible. And he kind of slung it around the yard there on Sunday. An awful matchup. You couldn't expect much against Pittsburgh, but I think he could sustain Jeudy if needed here. So I like, Driscoll to sustain these next 3 to 5 weeks for Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. Both guys, big risers on the rest of season, big board. But if you need replacements on the waiver wire, I'm guessing Robbie Anderson's not out there in leagues. We're going to talk about him a little bit. But Russell Gage, still only 21% owned, seeing a 23% target share so far. That needs to correct itself. Chase Claypool, 5% owned, going deep and getting bombs from Drew Big Ben. The guy is just a size speed nightmare. So Chase Claypool could carve himself out a nice role there. And hell, if you're really desperate, Keelan Cole has led the Jaguars in targets and yards back-to-back weeks. Is 3% owned right there. Maybe he's finally emerging. We saw some huge games just a couple seasons ago down the stretch. So maybe Keelan Cole can become of interest for you if you're trying to fill in that. And as we covered already, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman going to be out for at least week 3. Coleman looking at a multiple week injury. Mostert, though, said mild, so probably 1-2 weeks. Let's get him healthy, get him back on the field. Now, if you're on Facebook, any likes and shares, always greatly appreciated. I promise I see your comments coming in. I just want to rip through all the news for our pod fans and then ask me anything. Will ultimately emerge from there. So please, any likes, shares, greatly appreciated. Same on Twitter, always great. Let's get right back into your news. And we are on the risers of the week. Actually, real quick, other injury notes. Devontae Adams did have a hamstring flare-up. They said he probably could have returned to the game if it was competitive. It was not. So he did not have to go back in, but should be back in week 4, according to those tea leaves. Jimmy G also suffered an ankle sprain, but he was also in that position where he may have been able to return if they needed to. Kyle Shanahan saying it's not a serious concern, and he could even be back against the Giants this week. So nothing too worrisome. You're probably not relying on Garoppolo much anyways, but just to keep track of him and the rest of this offense. And then Cam Akers, rib injury, no clue yet the severity of that. He did not return on Sunday, though, so certainly nothing light. And Darrell Henderson looked great in his absence, alongside Malcolm Brown still there, vulturing touchdowns. It's not a great situation for Cam Akers right now. You probably have to hold and see how this develops, but not feeling great at all. Let's now get into the risers of the week, though. And number 1 on my list was James Conner. Fresh off a panic week. This guy's already hurt the ankle. He'll never stay on the field. Comes in, gets 16 carries, 116 yards, and a TD, adding just for the workhorse exclamation point, a nice 2 receptions and 15 yards. Solid day there against a good Broncos run D that kind of stifled Derrick Henry the week before. More encouraging, Benny Snell was nowhere to be heard of despite all these 1A, 1B rumors. He only gets 3 carries, 5 yards on the sideline the whole way, confirming this is James Conner's workhorse role. It's still a Tomlin offense, and the man loves his bell cows. So as long as Conner holds up, he's a weekly top 10 guy. It's just a matter of how long is that going to be. If you somehow bought low last week and his owner was panicking, then well done. I certainly wouldn't have advised it. I still would probably sell high after this game just because we know it's only a matter of time. A ticking time bomb. Sell high on James Conner, capitalize on this workhorse performance, but also a big bump in the big board after this showing. Antonio Gibson, my next big riser, the emerging number 1 for the Washington football team. Not a huge day here. 55 yards, touchdown. Nobody should be going crazy celebrating a stat line like that. But there's definitely some very, very encouraging signs. One was the touchdown, the goal line touch. Peyton Barber, nowhere to be heard from, 1 carry on the day. That is probably the biggest development, is after 17 carries, the team was sick of what they saw, as they should be. 1.7 yards a carry. Horrible. But also 66.7% snap share for Antonio Gibson. That's huge. Very few backs get that many snaps. That's clear workhorse potential that upped from 18 to 43 the week before. He ran 8 routes to now 22 in a single week and sees his 9 carries bump up to 14, including that goal line red zone usage. All extremely encouraging signs for Antonio Gibson on a Washington team that's starting to look a little more competitive on offense. Haskins, nothing special, but McLaurin, the way he can light it up. Gibson, buy low now. If somebody's just looking at his stats and seeing 11 fantasy points, whatever, that snap share, those touches, those routes run, all extremely encouraging for Antonio Gibson. Now, welcome back to the workhorse pool, Miles Sanders. What an unbelievable performance to and especially as the pool thins out with Christian McCaffrey and Saquon now being gone. This performance could not be understated. 20 carries for 95 yards and a TD, also getting 3 receptions and an additional 36 yards. Humongous ultimate stat performance, but just even bigger in the sense that it is confirmed he is the bell cow. There's no easing this guy in. This isn't, Doug Peterson's going to play his shenanigans with committees. We got career high targets. We got 83% of the carries, 70% of the targets, 77% of the total snaps, and 20 carries plus those, just an absolute tsunami of work for this guy, despite missing time with the hamstring. So health confirmed, workhorse role confirmed, absolute monster talent still there, looking fantastic. All things coming up, Miles Sanders. You have to be beyond thrilled if you were an owner and waiting patiently for him to see this type of performance against a pretty tough Rams front 7 there. So well done by Miles Sanders. Feel great about that. We already covered, James Conner on the Steelers, but Diontae Johnson might be the sneaky bigger storyline here. Gets 8 of his 13 targets hauled in for 92 yards and the touchdown. The bigger story, though, yes, the target share is enormous, but now he's up to 23, leads the team in back-to-back games in targets. 23 is towards the top in the league in general, but compared to the rest of the receiving core, Juju Smith-Schuster, he had those 2 touchdowns week 1, but Diontae has now out-targeted him 23-14, and the air yards are a whopping 144 for Diontae to 58 for Juju. That is a massive, massive differential for the guy that is widely considered the number 2, probably still thought of as the number 2 by most. To me, this is looking very firmly like Deontay's the number 1. He looks so smooth out there, getting open at will, knifing through defenses. And this is a Denver secondary that's not, they lost Harris. They're not amazing, but they certainly are towards the top half in the league. So this is some very encouraging play from Diontae. And I think until his owners are recognizing him as the true number one, you got to start considering some good buy low. It probably not buy low at this point, but you're not going to get him at cost if they're not valuing him as a true number one. And you got to, that's how I view him now moving forward, a top 15, top 20 wide receiver, whereas Juju gets a little bit bumped down with Diontae exploding as such. Now, next on my list, Jonathan Taylor. I am the captain now. And that is because this dude commanded everything out of the backfield. Legitimately did not get off the field in the first quarter and saw 11 carries in that span. 44 carry pace on the day. What a whopping start. He was thriving with it, ripping chunk gain after chunk gain, ultimately getting 26 carries for 101 yards and the score, hauling in another 2 catches for 9 yards. Huge effort, but bigger story is the fact that he saw 49 snaps as compared to 17 for Wilkins for God knows why, and then only 9 for Nyheim Hines, the darling of last week. We're going to cover him in a little bit. Holy shit, only 1 touch for Nyheim Hines as compared to 28 for Jonathan Taylor. If you had any doubts this was going to be this monster's backfield, make sure they're erased now. We told you he's going to be top 10 rest of season. Now should probably be bumped into your top 8, top 7. A tough crowd to crack, but he is right up there in the elite as a rest of season first rounder, in my opinion. Now, speaking of fantasy cheat codes, Josh Allen. What a ridiculous performance from Josh Allen on Sunday. And now back-to-back weeks, he is your high scorer in fantasy behind only Russell Wilson right now. He goes 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, in addition to some scrambling for another 18 yards. So just imagine, I mean, the Konami code wasn't even needed here for this dude to go over 35 fantasy points. What a monster effort. 47, 46, 38, 26-yard monster completions going deep down the field. He's got 729 yards through 2 games. Just an insane, and this was a career high, this 417 aerial performance from a guy that is widely considered horrible as a thrower. Just clearly these weapon upgrades with Diggs is just going to make this offense unstoppable. And what I love most about this guy and why I'm labeling his cheat code is even when they get up big, like we saw it in week 1, up by 2 scores the whole game against the pathetic Jets, and they still threw it 40 times. They're still keeping the pedal on the metal, even bombing deep to John Brown when it wasn't even completely necessary, just to keep showing that we can. A lot of 4 wide receiver sets, lots of pre-snap motion, just a creative offense that's looking very, very tough for defenses to stop. Now, it was against the Jets. It was against the Dolphins. Let's not crown this guy fantasy king shit yet. But man, the way this offense is operating has to have anybody that owns Josh Allen extremely encouraged. I got to shout out TJ Hernandez on Twitter. Dude was labeling him the potential number 1 fantasy quarterback as a cheat code, and it's looking to come up in spades here. And in that light, Stephon Diggs, the number 1 of this emerging fantasy cheat code, always good to be attached to a guy that's balling out. Diggs gets 13 targets. Massive target share, hauls in 8 of them for 153 and a score. It just was dazzling all day, ripping up chunk play after chunk play. The ankle breaking routes are just, he's one of the best, if not the best route runner in the league. And Allen is not taking his value. And conversely, he's just giving Diggs jump ball opportunities. We thought a low volume Vikings attack escaping that would be counteracted by Josh Allen's inaccuracies. The way Josh Allen's balling out, though, this is going to be a beautiful thing for Stephon Diggs. He bumps up 15 spots in my wide receiver rankings and has to be considered an elite wide receiver to low-end wide receiver 1. Let's see him do it in some tougher matchups coming up, though. Another emerging fantasy quarterback cheat code, Cam Newton. Another gem of a day. But what is so encouraging about it is it came through the air and the ground, not just the 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, he goes back-to-back 2 rushing touchdown scores from week 1, week 2, so 4 TDs on the ground already. That was what we expected. That's why, Hannibal coming in and saying they're remodeling this offense around him. The rushing Konami code upside is just out of this world. But then to see him Huckett 44 times in a negative game script where they had to play catch-up duty and compile 397 with a score. Might be one of, if not the best passing performance we've seen from this guy, Cam Newton, at least in years. You know, the MVP season, we definitely had some 4 or 5 passing touchdown days, but just amazing throws too. High degree of difficulty connecting with Edelman deep, N'Keal Harry going down the field, just making effortless, really high difficulty throws look effortless. This was not the Cam Newton we saw last year with the, ailed by the shoulder, elbow, all those different concerns. This guy can rope it. He's running. He's playing wild. This looks like MVP Cam, folks. And certainly the fantasy results would agree. The number 3 scorer in fantasy, only again, Allen and Russell Wilson have more fantasy points right now than this guy. We know the rushing upside is going to happen every single week. Now, when you can project a week for shootouts or them playing from behind the Patriots, it's just it's not like he's game flow dependent because the scores are always going to be there on the ground. But knowing that he can also get it done in these types of situations locks him into a top 6 quarterback spot in the rest of season rankings, right in tier 1, alongside the Daks, alongside the Kylers, alongside, again, Josh Allen now too. Those guys all belong. And I wouldn't even say, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes are that significantly steps above Cam, Allen, Murray, Dak. That whole tier, I think, is just one now rather than having those 2 guys clearly above them looking down. Aaron Jones, I regret greatly not having this guy in my top 10 and now even top 5 coming into the year. A.J. Dillon's going to vulture everything. I bought into it. I was nervous about the touchdown regression. I didn't factor in just how good this guy can and probably will be as a wide receiver too. 168 yards on the ground, 2 scores, just in terms of pure running ability, has to be in any top 5 list, in my opinion, right alongside, Chubb and Henry. Jones is an amazing rusher, but the target share is what's really intriguing here. 8 targets, catches 4 of them for another 68 yards and score. The clear high scorer of the week. If you had him in DraftKings, congratulations. But it is very intriguing that a lot of this work comes when Davante Adams gets banged up. He has 14 targets and a 19% share on his 36 routes this year. So when he's on the field, he's getting targeted on almost all of them. 36 routes, 14 targets. Let me just repeat that again. Crazy amount of share. So whenever he's running routes, he's getting targeted. And now, Adams banged up, probably going to play, but it is worth noting on any time Davante Adams has missed time or not played a full game, that amounts to 6 games. Ian Hartitz tweeting out, Aaron Jones has 7, 8, 7, 4, 8, and 8 targets in all those. And we just saw what he can do. And if you watch the game, some of those catches, leaping, high degree of difficulty catches. So all this to say is, one, we all overreacted to the A.J. Dillon news. 2, these touchdown totals are still they're lofty, and he could end up hitting them again. 3, he has to be top 6 overall on any big board moving forward. It's absolutely dominant, the share he has. And again, speaking of those slot games, 6 snaps in the slot, again, from Ian Hartitz, he's only done that twice, including this week, and then also against the Chiefs in 2019. He had 7 catches, 159, and 2 TDs on those 8 targets, 7 receptions. So the dude can ball out when he's used as a receiver, and we're seeing that this year, which is buoying the value that we thought might regress. Last couple risers here, the Herbert effect. Man, was that in effect this week with the Chargers. Josh Kelly, we got Austin Eckler, we got Keenan Allen, all showing better because of Justin Herbert, a nice stabilizing force at quarterback, showing a lot of balls too, almost getting the win on, against Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champs. Now, is Anthony Lynn going to be a complete moron? Maybe. He's suggesting that Tyrod Taylor is still their starter and he didn't see enough from Justin Herbert. I mean, what's the dude fucking thinking? I don't get it. But ultimately, if Herbert's the starter, we saw a ton of positive developments. Eckler, one, getting targeted far more than he did the week before, seeing 4 targets, hauling them all in for 55 yards, more space on the ground, gets 93 yards on the ground, doesn't find the end zone, unfortunately. We're still waiting for that Austin Eckler beastly TD day, but a solid effort nonetheless. Josh Kelly, though, 23 fucking carries. My good Lord, Josh Kelly, not overly efficient with 64, but does find his way into the end zone. Or no, he didn't. He had 49 yards as a receiver as well, 2 catches. So no touchdowns, but getting the goal line work still there. Somehow still out there in over half a league. So Josh Kelly, talking about backup plans for Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, he's got to be the first one you look. Facing Carolina this week, nonetheless. Definitely a touchdown this week. Keenan Allen also rises, 7 catches, 96 yards on 10 targets. Very much benefited from that nice rhythm passing from Justin Herbert. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Herbert remains the guy moving forward. CeeDee Lamb, speaking of the guy, holy hell. I knew this guy, own him on so many teams, and I am beyond thrilled to do so. He hauls in 6 of his 9 targets for a rip-roaring 106 yards, and it's just, you see him. He's in there every freaking snap in the slot, moving over the place in motion, and he is smooth beyond all belief. Like you see somebody pop off the field, every time he touches it, or even just every route he runs is silky, and it's fast, and it looks like a different level than a lot of the players around him. So I love what I'm seeing. He has now out-targeted Michael Gallup in back-to-back weeks. And speaking of Gallup, a pathetic day, 2 catches on 5 targets, 58 yards. And we very much predicted this. We very much said we're super low on Gallup because we think CeeDee Lamb's going to be better. And thus far, it has completely been the case where CeeDee out-targeting Gallup, who now only has 108 scoreless yards on the season. You don't drop Gallup, but he has definitely fallen to not must-start territory, in my opinion, whereas CeeDee Lamb on the opposite end has risen to must-start territory. I love this performance. Last couple here, Browns running backs. This was a Thursday night nugget, so not necessarily Sunday's action, but we wrote an article called Why Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt Can Both Feast in Fantasy. And this Thursday night display was the exact epitome of that. 22 carries for Chubb, 124 and a pair of TDs, just steamrolling that defense of the Bengals. But not to be outdone, Kareem Hunt also pounding in 2 scores, 1 through the air, 1 on the ground, 86 yards rushing, 15 yards passing. So both guys having monster days, just as we predicted. Now, clearly at that point then, Kareem Hunt becomes the better fantasy pick because you got him for around 6-7 price. He now has 36 points on the year compared to Nick Chubb, who's just below him after this big blow-up day. But overall, you got to be thoroughly encouraged, one, by the line improvements. I mean, they were just mauling this defensive front of the Bengals all over the place. 2, zone blocking scheme looking so much better. That's a system that does take a few weeks, some repetitions. Like that's one that in the preseason would have greatly benefited from some action to really gain that cohesion, because you cannot run a zone blocking scheme without everybody being on the same page. So chalk that bad week on up to a lack of chemistry, a tough, awful Baltimore, defense. That was a tough matchup with this line fully churning with that zone blocking scheme, really looking great. I loved what I saw from this run game, and I feel great about these guys. Chubb, high-end, both high-end RB2s, honestly, in my opinion. I still value Chubb just a little bit higher than Hunt, although Hunt does have the standalone receiving value, so maybe that could flip as the season goes. Just both monster running backs, though. Guy that I hate talk positively about, as anybody on here would know, that's Mr. David Montgomery. But you got to give the guy credit when you got to give the guy credit. He's 16 carries as well as 3 targets, so a nice approaching that 20 opportunity threshold, and racks up a robust 127 total yards, 45 through the air, 82 on the ground, and pounds in a score. Oh, God, I was down on him, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm back in on him. I, again, similar to some other guys earlier, would probably recommend selling high here. I don't think it gets much better than this matchup here against the Giants. I mean, joke, fucking pathetic. But ultimately, the workhorse role is there. You can tell when they're up and have a positive game script, they're going to be feeding this guy. It just depends, when they're underdogs, is he going to continue to maintain that? That's why I think Tariq Cohen could see some sneaky bigger involvement in the coming weeks when it's not, the Detroit Lions. It's not the Giants. We're going to see negative game scripts. And if Montgomery responds and he's in all game, then I will have to eat even more crow. But at this point, I'm probably taking this opportunity to gauge the value, especially for a, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey owner. If you're stacked at running back and you can depart with Montgomery and get like a nice wide receiver too for this guy, I would definitely start exploring those trade waters. But 3-down monster in the right game flow, still nice to see if you own him. Escaping from Gase, the great escape, always a great place to get away from Adam Gase. But Robbie Anderson, the latest to explode out of the awful, looming, disgusting shadow of Adam Gase, as our tailback Tino calls him, the talent sucker, the ruiner. Just you go there to die. He sees 10 targets, hauls in 9 of them, Robbie Anderson, for 109 yards. This is fresh off a 115-yard TD day the week before, seeing 8 targets. So, 18 targets these last couple of weeks. No joke. And it's not just, standard Robbie stretch the field and be a decoy and open up everything for everybody else. He's getting screens. He's getting peppered over the middle. He's racking up yak right now. It's not just air yards, Robbie. That's a big development that he fits this Joe Brady scheme. Matt Rule, who coached him at Temple, clearly went out and wanted this guy for a reason. And it's looking like he might emerge as a true alpha. Now, DJ Moore also balled out, reaffirmed that he's the number one here. But Robbie Anderson, a close Robin to his Batman. Just a matter of what's left here for Curtis Samuel, unless he starts getting some backfield touches in that Christian McCaffrey less offense right now. Another escape of Adam Gase is Ryan Tannehill. And ever since he's been out of Gase's shadow, the guy's done nothing but ball out. He's currently outscoring Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in the majority of leagues, depending on your settings, and he's still only 46% owned. I don't get it. What's not to like here? He was the quarterback 3 last year once he took over as the starter. Only Lamar Jackson had more points per game on average there. And he comes out, has a nice 4-touchdown day. Everybody's screaming, Titans have to regress as an offense. They were so damn efficient in the red zone. There's no way they do it again. And they're doing it again. I think Arthur Smith might be a real offensive genius here. And with defenses just selling out to stop Henry. It's old school. It's ground and bound. It's establishing the run that nobody, wants to or gravitates to in the modern game. But then Arthur Smith's getting so creative off of that, kind of like Kyle Shanahan in a way where he 45% runs, 55 rather, a majority runs. Then just the way he builds off it, though. It's not just the matter of establishing the run. It's what you build off of that. And Arthur Smith does a great job, especially within the red zone, of building in some sneaks, some bootlegs. And this all, again, came without A.J. Brown there, almost 30 points this week. So when he gets his stalwart number one back, the Tannehill disrespect, at minimum, let's see this guy please get over 50% owned. Like, what are we doing here? Last three last risers, then the fallers, then your questions. Is Leonard Fournette going to take over for Ronald Jones? It sure seems so. And by the performance, it definitely suggests he should. Sees 12 carries, rips him up for 103 yards and 2 scores, while also catching 4 balls for 13 yards. Now, the vast majority of this came on that monster 46-yard touchdown late in the game. But Jones fumbled. Fournette comes in, kind of grinds it out, scores a touchdown the next drive. And meanwhile, Ronald Jones only seeing 7 carries, 23 yards, 2 passes, and a score. Without that early touchdown, Jones would have been a complete bust on the day. And Fournette looked better at multiple parts of the game. Bruce Arians came out and said, I really want Fournette in this closer role. I love what he did. What if he also gets the starter role too? So we know he's going to close out when they're up big. I think Tom Brady's going to build leads more often than he doesn't. And That's all just negative for Jones, who fell on the big board pretty hard this week while Fournette rose a decent amount. And I'm not saying they're both locked in, dependable. You can have Fournette and not think twice. Probably not. I mean, Arians just is all over the place with his running backs. But Arians, when he finds his guy, also typically rides them. And it seems like Fournette's starting to emerge as his guy. He's certainly not going to take any more Ronald Jones fumbles. So the big boost here for Fournette, both outperforming and better ball security than Ronald Jones on Sunday. Tyler Higbee. We're going to talk about two monster tight end performances, one of them being Tyler Higbee, hauling in 5 targets, which is nothing special. 5 targets. Oh, boy, that seems like a recipe for disaster. The week before, he had 5 targets and turned them into only 40 yards, barely usable. But this week, he catches all 5, 54, and 3 of those catches went for touchdowns. So a beastly day. Jared Goff was looking for him everywhere in the red zone. And this was the type of usage, especially in the red zone area, that we saw last year that facilitated the number 1 tight end finish over those last 5 weeks, better than Kittle, better than Kelsey. Nobody outscored Higbee, who was on pace for like 170 targets. Now, the volume was not quite there yet, but the scores were. The offense remains, dominant. 2 tight ends. Play action is fantastic for Higbee, getting open down those seams. Just looked really, really good in that rapport. Whereas he was an afterthought last week, we saw right where he left off last year here. So I think we see a little balance of those two kind of meet in the middle here and have a nice Higbee rest of season. And the last tight end on my list, a monster blow-up day from Mike Gesicki, the athletic freak out of Penn State, sees a whopping 11 targets, hauls in 8 of them, despite running only 35 routes. So targeted nearly every third route that he ran, accumulates 129 yards and a score despite the losing effort. Everything about that was beastly. You could not be stopped, Gesicki, by corners, by safeties. Linebackers obviously got dusted, but even Tre'Davious White in the red zone gave up the touchdown to Gesicki. The guy is obviously, if you look at his player profiler or any of those good metrics, everything comes up as a freak athlete. And now that he's seeing a lot of slot snaps, Chan Gailey, he never throws to his tight end, right? Well, what if he uses his tight end as a big-bodied slot receiver? That is exactly what we're seeing. So ultimately, a monster day from this guy. Tough stretch of defenses in still getting it done against the Bills. Got a few more tough games coming up, but his athleticism is not going to waste. It was not just Gailey hates his tight ends and will never throw to him. We saw that this game. We saw Fitzpatrick, just as he does with his wide receivers, bombing it up and letting his big body go make a play. And that's all Gesicki did every single time they went his way on Sunday. So that covers all our risers of the week. The fallers list, rest of season fallers, isn't quite as extensive as that. Crazy Sunday, folks. But we do have a few quick names to rip through. I see we got 44 questions. I promise you, not ignoring them just for the podcast's sake, trying to keep it smooth here. So I appreciate so deeply your patience here. And if you listen to the podcast, Fantasy Fullback Dive, we paved that path. The 2020 titles, likes, subscriptions, all that good stuff, and reviews are so appreciated. Nyheim Hines, Fantasy Fool's Gold off the week 1 waiver. Oh, man, if you buried your fab into this guy, my apologies. I mean, I kind of endorsed it. How could you not? I mean, huge target share week 1, 2 scores. I think the second or third highest scoring running back in week 1. Phillip Rivers, 17 targets to the running back. I mean, everything was like, okay, Hines is going to have a huge role. Even Frank Reich coming out and saying this week, yet Hines still has a massive role despite Jonathan Taylor taking over as our starter. And what does Hines do but one touch? 0.9 half PPR fantasy points. Whew, that'll kill the lineup. Definitely worth some hate cutting if it's going to be cathartic for you. My God, that was a disgusting performance. And I don't think you have to go out and sprint and cut this guy. I think when the game flow is right, he's going to still see his 6 to 10 target days. And he looked so explosive week 1. He's not just going to disappear like this every single week. But Taylor is also the real fucking deal, as we have said. And when they are up and when they're running, they're not going to go away from the guy, nor should they go away from the guy. So Hines back to, where I thought he might get away from his game flow dependent status without Marlon Mack there. And I thought they might split carries just a little bit. No, God, no, not even close. So Nyheim Hines, definite faller, not someone you can rely on, not someone you can trust. And if you have a good waiver wire, if your league's pretty shallow, you could potentially send him packing. Another Colt, though. I guess let's go first to some other fantasy waiver wire fool's gold. It's tricky because you never want to underreact to week one. In my experience, it seems to be that owners underreact instead of overreacting. But it seems like Hines and Malcolm Brown might both be overreactions based on what we saw on Sunday. Darrell Henderson comes on in and lights it up. Sean McVay wants to show, this is my guy. I spent a third rounder on last year. Everybody raved about him. Gets 12 carries, 81 yards, and a score. Looks real explosive in doing so. He's out there in 30% of the league. Also hauls in 2 catches for 40. So, this was 121 total yards for Darrell compared to 47 for the far less explosive-looking Brown, who also got a little dinged up in the game. At this point, it seems to me like it's going to be the Darrell Henderson show until Akers is back, and then we get a little bit of a muddy picture. But Henderson was taking goal line carries, out-touches him 14-11, Malcolm Brown. And yeah, it's still a committee. That's what Sean McVay is going to do this year. It's pretty clear. But it looks to me like Darrell Henderson, especially with Akers uncertain, is the lead guy in this committee against the Bills. Must target amidst this injury waiver madness of the week. So Malcolm Brown, though, definitely hits the bench here until we see him reemerge, if we ever see him reemerge. Not convinced we will, folks. We talk about the Colts and someone disappointing us. Oh, man, what's it going to be for T.Y. Hilton? This has been a awful, awful, awful start to the year for Mr. T.Y. Hilton, doing absolutely nothing against a Viking secondary that had just gotten battered, beaten, smashed all over by Devontae Adams and that Vikings, that Packers wide receiving core had given up the most fantasy points of all to the wide receiver position. T.Y. manages a nice, robust 3 catches for 28 yards. That has no business, folks, on my team, on your team. That is disgusting. And if you're not going to do it against the Vikings, then when can you? Who are you going to do it against? I am significantly concerned right now. I don't know if it's Phillip Rivers just has his arm cooked. I don't know if those two just don't have a rapport. I don't know if this offense is phasing T.Y. out, but has not yet topped 53 yards, 53, then 28, 4 catches, season high. It is inefficient. It's gross. It's just not happening. And T.Y. Hilton has to be placed on benches until further notice. Again, you can't do it against the Vikings. When the fuck's it going to happen? Will Fuller, we hope you listened and sold high, folks. A nice goose egg for Mr. Fuller. And worse than the lack of production, you saw what we always knew you were going to see. In and out and stretching and what's going on. And it's all mysterious. No one knows. But he certainly was not his full explosive self. And he certainly was not in for every snap. And he did absolutely nothing. So ultimately, Will Fuller, we told you to sell high last week with all this Will Fuller's an alpha wide receiver one buzz going. And I hope you capitalized. Just like we, again, think you should probably sell high on David Montgomery and a few of these other guys we've talked about that had these big blow-up days. James Conner, a ticking time bomb. Will Fuller was a ticking time bomb, and it's already detonated on you. So ultimately, you have to be discouraged. If you held on, you didn't buy, you didn't sell high. He fell about 30, 40 spots on my rest of season big board. Just a headache I don't want to deal with. Some guys to cut too. Rob Gronkowski, Chris Herndon, send their asses on packing to the waiver wire. 11 catches or 11 yards right now for Rob Gronkowski on the season. Bruce Arians' offense never been tight end friendly, and certainly not for a guy looking slow, sluggish, and just not himself anymore. So Gronkowski, see you later. That Jonnu Smith over Rob Gronkowski tweet looking pretty good right now for all you people giving me shit for that one. And then Chris Herndon. I never got the love on this guy. Everybody asking me about Herndon in the beginning of the year, but then everybody also loved Crowder, and they also loved Perriman, and it's Sam Darnold, the quarterback. And even without these guys there, Kernan doesn't do jack shit. The guy just gets so much praise every year because Adam Gase decides to gargle his balls, and he doesn't do anything ever with it. Hopefully you didn't fall for the trap. We gave you Mo Alley Cox over him. We gave you Jordan Reed over him. There were some options to go to over Herndon. And if you did him yet again, it is time, folks, to send that ass onto the waiver wire. So Chris Herndon, absolute, just complete disgusting performance from this guy. You cannot feel good. You got to cut him. Just fucking hate cut the dude alongside Rob Gronkowski. Now, a guy I am not pleased to say down on because I still think he's a monster, but that's J.K. Dobbins. What the fuck? It's 2 carries? What? And of course, he rips 44 yards on one of them because he is the best back there. I still think it's only a matter of time till he takes over and is a league winner. But it's going to probably take a little bit longer than I expected when Gus Edwards sees 10 fucking touches. Oh, what? Why? Huh? Who? Gus Edwards? What's the point of that? What is the fucking point of Gus Edwards? Gus Edwards actually looked pretty decent getting his 10 carries. I've always actually kind of liked Gus Edwards as this big, huge body that can steamroll. But come on, you got J.K. fucking Dobbins. You spend a round 2 pick on this guy, and I think it was one of the steals of the draft. The guy is unbelievable, and we saw it on his limited work here. But if he's going to be this uncertain every week, no more goal line staples here this week is Mark Ingram scoring the 30-yard scamper. Dobbins not seeing any of the goal line work this week. That was what made us confident you could start him. If you're only getting 2 carries and it's just going to be that much of a carousel, then fuck you, Greg Roman. I can't get aboard that. So very concerning. Dobbins now becomes a bench fixture, one of the best bench fixtures you can have, because I still, again, think it's a matter of time. When he gets his touches, he's going to keep showing I'm the best guy. It just matters when they wake up and use him that way. But definitely a downer for him. And then last 2 fallers here. Todd Gurley, just completely and utterly touchdown dependent and didn't score this week, so did nothing for your lineup. If he doesn't score early like he did in week 1, you're getting just dud after dud after dud because this offense is going to take it to the air almost exclusively this season. 1, because that defense is just god-awful. 2, because their run blocking line is god-awful. So we see 12 points last week, 6 points this week. Just not going to happen for Todd Gurley there in Atlanta as predicted. So I'm not a fan. Don't want him in my lineups most weeks because most weeks the Falcons are going to go down. They're going to go down big, and Gurley's going to become phased out completely. It's too bad he's not the 3rd down back because then they're going to again be throwing so often. Just not Gurley's role. He'll have a couple random 2, maybe even 3 touchdown days mixed in here. But Dirk Cutter loves his committees, and Gurley's on the wrong side of a committee, given this is such a pass-happy attack. And last but not least, is it time to smash that panic button on Mr. Joe Mixon? Whew, it's getting damn close, isn't it, folks? I'm sure your blood's boiling just as mine is for anywhere you own Joe Mixon. I'm not panicking quite yet, though. The guy is just so fucking damn good. Every time he caught the ball, he was making a man miss and ripping up yardage. Meanwhile, we see Gio fucking bum-ass Bernard getting hit and going down the second he gets touched, getting 2-minute drills. Like, what I don't get, Zach Taylor, head coach of the Bengals, is why did you rave about how good Mixon was the second half of the year, how you turned your offensive keys over to the guy, and you saw the results, and they were beautiful. Mixon was the RB4 in fantasy. That offense was humming. I mean, he was racking up like 160 scrimmage yards a game. It was unbelievable. Most carries in the league over that second half of the year. All to hype him up, to pump those tires and give him 10, 12 touches a game. What are we doing? What are we doing? He's such a good receiver, too. It should not be a game flow dependent guy. And if he is in it, and that's what it looks like, that's not fucking good because the Bengals, newsflash, still suck, especially on defense. And the offensive line, the other concern here, they don't look much better. They got their first rounder of last year back, and it's not making much of a whole difference. He's getting still stuffed behind the line. Burrow's getting killed every time he throws. I'm intrigued and I'm encouraged by how good Burrow looks, because it should mean more touchdown opportunities for Joe Mixon. I'm holding them. I'm buying low too if his owner is panicking, because I do think it becomes the Mixon show at some point, and the offensive improvement by Burrow I think just continues, and I think by week 5, 6 this offense really starts to hum. I think the line really starts to gel, and we just see a whole different Bengals scheme that's centered around Mixon. That's what I'm banking on, where I'm going to start tossing out my buy lows, but we'll find out. And now, waiver wire sneak peek. I'm going to do a full exclusive waiver wire show tomorrow, talking about fab, talking about all your good stuff. But let me get you the names of who you have to be looking at here on your waiver wire. Number 1, Jerick McKinnon, we talked about, 22% owned. If you're a long-term Roto follower this preseason, he should not be available in your league because he should be on your bench. He was our must-hammer late-round penny stock, and it's already, just the usage in general was great, the receiving usage, all that good stuff. But now 2 starters gone in front of him. If he, shows, let me quickly switch over the overlay here. If we see McKinnon perform to his upside, I mean, this guy is a freak spark athlete. Kyle Shanahan gave him the 4th richest running back deal at the time because of how much he got lost in his tape. And now he has his shot to be the every down back. He might take this and completely run with it. Now, Mostert has looked so good that I can't imagine he doesn't return and have a role, but McKinnon could really carve himself out like the clear cut 1A, 1B. Like, I'm going to see 14 to 15 touches every week, including a monster 20 or so against the Giants. So you're getting weak streamer, especially if you lost your Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, and then a really good shot at some nice standalone value. That makes McKinnon my hands-on favorite for the waiver wire pickup of the week. But Mike Davis not far behind now that we know Christian McCaffrey could be out 4 to 6 weeks. Sees 8 targets, hauls them all in the fourth quarter for 70 yards, 74 to be exact. He's going to be the bell cow. There's nobody else. Davis, whenever he's gotten work, has been churned. He's ugly. He doesn't get anything like sexy, but he does go forward and plow. And we're going to see that physical boy get 15 to 20 touches every single week. Good bet for a touchdown every week. So another one, if you're desperate at running back, you need that Barkley or C-Mac fill-in, got to throw a lot to the wire to get this sub. But Darrell Henderson, also 31% owned. We already talked about it. 121 yards and a score. Out-touching, out-playing, out-everything. Malcolm Brown could be that lead back, should be that lead back, expecting to be that lead back here moving forward. Also, Russell Gage, 21% owned, seeing 23% target share. Definite great replacement for a Cortland Sutton. Gardner Minshew, somehow only 32% owned. I don't understand that one. I mean, Minshew's been lighting the league on fire here. Completes 19 of 20 in week 1. Comes back, in a game script where he has to keep them competitive. 30 of 45, 339, and 3 scores. I mean, the guy is balling. He likes this Jay Gruden system, it sure seems, and he's thrived. So that needs to get up to 70% owned. I have Gardner Minshew ranked above Drew Brees in my rest of season rankings, rest of season big board up there. You also get Chase Claypool at wide receiver. I like the athleticism this dude brings. The Steelers attack, that 80-yard bomb touchdown, I think it's going to happen more often than this guy has Martavis Bryant measurables without all that off-field baggage. So let's respect this guy for the freak he is and make sure he's owned in a lot more than 5% of leagues. Mo Alley Cox and Dalton Schultz, 2 tight ends that completely feasted. Mo Alley Cox, the highest graded Pro Football Focus grade since like Rob Gronkowski 5 years ago with a 94. The classic basketball, big body rebounder. We saw it all though. I mean, again, 115 yards on a day that T.Y. Hilton mustered. Right? What do we even say here? Mo Alley Cox, like outscoring T.Y. Hilton by 5 more targets, 111 yards, just a monster all day. Jordan Reed too, if George Kittle is out, another play there. But Schultz, let's talk about this guy real quick for the Cowboys. 10 targets, hauls in 9 of them. Team high nonetheless, 10 targets, 88 yards and a TD. You can't expect a team high 10 targets to go to this dad runner every week, but he's got to be on your fantasy map because this offense, we can clearly tell, is always going to be pounding it and getting down the field. And a big body with Dak, putting that ball where he wants it in the red zone, Schultz will definitely carry a good touchdown a week type of upside. I mean, would not be shocked to see this guy pounding 8 to 10 touchdowns by the end of the season. This complete nobody, for the record. And if he's going to get these type of intermediate, like chain moving looks, like we saw Jason Witten get last year, but to himself because Blake Jarwin's done. I mean, Dalton Schultz, a huge benefactor this week of that Blake Jarwin injury. Wish I had definitely stacked him in a few other leagues. And we mentioned Keelan Cole when we talked about Cortland Sutton, only 3% owned, hauls in 6 of his 7 targets for 58 yards and a score. Second time he's scored a touchdown. Second time he's out-targeted DJ Chark for the week. I love Laviska Shenault also there, but Keelan Cole, amidst all the buzz about Shenault being the running back receiver, a deserved buzz nonetheless. He's kind of getting overlooked here. So definitely keep Keelan Cole on your waiver wire radar. We talked about Gaskins as well. 7 touches, 7 targets, the clear lead back right now for Miami on a Miami offense that's really been moving the ball pretty well, even in tough matchups here. So I like him. And then last but not least, your Giants running backs, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Gallman? Is it going to be Dion? Is it going to be Devonta Freeman? We don't know, but until we find out, it's worth a speculative ad on all 3. And definitely just make sure you check Josh Kelly is not available in your league. If he is, come on up to the big leagues and do something better than that. That's garbage. All righty, folks. Thank you so much for your patience. That was a nice hour of content because it was a crazy week too. If I missed any player you want me to cover, if there's any storylines that I am overlooking right now, by all means, comment it on in. I have no clue what's happening on Monday Night Football right now because I am here for all you guys. So let's talk to Austin Firster. What up, Doe? Good to see you, brother. Is Freeman worth using my first pickup job mess? I hope you're still with me because I would say no. I mean, I want to know what other running backs are out there. If it's complete garbage, then okay, job mess. But no, not in my opinion. You'd look for Jerick McKinnon, Josh Kelly, Mike Davis, all guys I would go to before Freeman. Jeremiah asking, is Devonta Freeman a must-add? Similar to Mess. If you need a running back, then he's worth an ad. But there's, again, all those names that I'd rather have than Devonta Freeman. Sure, he's, good speculative ad. I just don't know that he takes over a full workhorse role. In fact, I know he won't. Dude's been on the fucking waiver wire for a reason, on the real life waiver wire, whatever you fucking call it, free agency. And this line is awful. Daniel Jones doesn't really look like he took the next step. I mean, the matchups have been just as brutal as can be, but I don't see any real value in that backfield. I think it's going to be ugly. So give me those other running back alternatives first, is my opinion on it. Snagged up Austin Freeman because I had trash sitting waiting for tonight. You might as well, right? If you got some bench trash to clean up, go for it. I absolutely agree with that. And I think Danny Dimes will be okay. 2-0 start though. That's what I love to hear, my man Austin. I lost C-Mac, traded Eckler last week for Evans and T.Y. Oh, Corey, that is not good, my man. Won't be able to get Mike Davis on the waiver either. Shaking my head. Ooh, that's bad. Jeremiah, I lost Saquon, but I have McKinnon. I'd rather have McKinnon than Freeman. Give me McKinnon all day. I have McKinnon and thought about dropping him. Thank God I didn't. I unfortunately did, Tunes, so that sucks. In one league, not all my. I own him everywhere, and I had to drop him for a defense. My bench was just too stacked. Regret that one. Certainly do, especially after this week. Drop Hines or hold? Was it game plan or game flow? I think it was a little mix of both here, Daniel, in the sense that Jonathan Taylor's their guy. If and when they can feed this guy, they're gonna. If they have a lead, it's gonna be Jonathan Taylor. You're not gonna hear from Hines. If they get down, we might see a little bit of Nyheim Hines, but I hope you heard my take there. Not a must hold, in my opinion. He was one of the biggest fallers by far on this week's board. Want to be a guest sometime? Dude, I'll always have you on, Austin. Can I go ahead and bench Ingram at this point? I'm getting all this Ingram hate here, and it's like, okay, the dude led the team in targets this week. They just lost Saquon, and this offense is going to now have to run through the pass. I don't get what's the problem here. I mean, he had, 80 yards on the day, 6 catches. Like, it wasn't horrible. I mean, if you got a great option, I forget who you have, Craig, ahead of him. But ultimately, I mean, I'm seeing all this Ingram hate, and I'm not necessarily understanding why. Gets shut out by Pittsburgh. Okay, I get that. And then, leads the team in targets and is, again, going to be highly involved, I think, moving forward. So, no, I would not. I'd be trying to buy low. Ingram's killing me. Like, I don't want to give up on him. What did he do this week? Wasn't it like 6 catches for like 65 yards or something like that? If that's killing you, then, I mean, you guys are getting fucking greedy at tight end. That, to me, seems pretty damn good. What wide receiver should I target if I traded away Ertz? That's tricky because I don't know how high Ertz's value is right now, Jeremiah. I mean, on name value, you should be able to rip like a wide receiver, a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2, maybe like a Devontae Parker. I mean, shoot for the moon. You always want to go higher, right? And try to get like a A.J. Brown from his hurt owner or something like that. But, I mean, I don't know how much people are going to value this guy on the market after a couple duds in a row here. Benny Snell worth holding on to. I mean, anybody behind James Conner is worth a hold, Robert, as pure handcuff. It's just a little disappointing to now know it's not going to be a handcuff with benefits. It's a pure handcuff. And they have their own value, but there's never going to be like a bye week where you can plug in Benny Snell. So to me, that depends on what your other options are, Robert. Who's out there on your waivers. In most leagues, I'd like to have Snell stashed because I don't trust Connor to stay healthy. I think Connor, again, one of the ultimate sell highs right now. But do you have to hold Snell? No, not a must hold at this point. Abram from the Raiders might be dead. Jeez, I didn't see the play, but I hope he's okay. Time to drop Akers, says K. Coolwhip. Let's see what this injury is. I would not drop him yet because you might be dropping this year's Miles Sanders. Now, that's probably not going to happen at this point. But we saw Henderson rip it up. And Akers, if and when he can get it all together, I think is better than all these guys still. Now, if this rib injury comes in and it's like he's going to miss 6 weeks, well, we'll see you later, Cam. But let's see what his health is before we send him packing. T.Y. Hilton is killing me. He hasn't broken 10 points. Is it hate cut? It might be extreme, but honestly, like I was saying, Tunes, like, if you're not doing it against Minnesota, who are you going to fucking do it against? That's the worst secondary in the league right now. So, I mean, depending on your waiver wires and depending on how damn good it might feel for you, if you hate cut him, you got to record it at least. We got to get the wine line going. How many of you, if you, all you guys watching, if you're willing to record just complete bashing of your least favorite players right now, we'd love to compile that and maybe even give, a little cash prize to the funniest one. Let's get that going. I'll get that up tonight. I'm going to write it down right now. Wine line. We're going to get the wine line back, folks. It seems like T.Y. Hilton would be a fantastic one, Tunes, to kick off the wine line for you this year. Mike Clay, Cam Akers, day to day. So it's day to day. That's much better than week to week. So it sounds like he should be better. Tunes I would hold because Campbell's going to be out for a minute, says Corey. Yeah, that seems about right. Spoke Gibson into existence. Sure did. Rookie's coming out party, and it's only just beginning, Mike Clay. I'm with it. Kamara with a TD. Interesting to see. I wonder what he's up to at this point. Corey Wilkes, I see that, but he still only got 5.8 points, even with Campbell going out in the first quarter. So, I mean, yeah, I see both sides of it. You told me to start Terry over Ronald Jones. Let's go. I always get the shit when I tell you the wrong stuff. So when people come in and shout me out for the good stuff, Z-balls, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, brother. Absolutely happy to give you that. I have Josh Allen and Aaron Jones in my both league. I won. Sure would hope so. If you lost and you had Josh Allen and Aaron Jones, Cody, that would be tough. But, man, that's an explosive duo right there after this week. Got the number one waiver. Is Darrell Henderson worth it? He's in a crowded backfield. He could be. I mean, if you need a running back list in Portis, he's one of the top options. To me, it's between him, it's McKinnon, and it's Mike Davis. And I'd probably rather have Henderson over Mike Davis unless I lost McCaffrey and I need that like immediate 4 to 6 week like emergency plan. If it's more so just to have a running back, I think Henderson could be the better long-term buy there. The milkman, Milliken, saying he bought into the Dylan hype too. Yeah, we were wrong on that one. Thanks, Doc. Hopefully Herbert stays in the number one spot. They look like a whole new team. I agree. I don't get what Taylor's saying, Tunes, about like, Herbert left a lot to be desired. We didn't win the damn game. Like this is still Taylor's job. He's clearly better. What the fuck are you seeing, Anthony Lynn? Absolutely senile, dude. That's going to be Adam Gase level incompetency if he goes back to him. Minshew and Tannehill available. I have Breeze and Stafford. What two would you like? And if I'm going free agent, how much money? So, I mean, when you got that many good options, I'm probably not bidding too much on a position that's not necessary. I might dare say I like the two guys on the waiver wire better than the two you have, though. How's Breeze doing tonight? I haven't been able to watch the game yet till after the show, but I kind of like Tannehill and Minshew. But you got some good options, so I don't think it's a must go out there. Would you play Eckler and Kelly on the same week, depending on the matchup? I think, Robert, this type of week when they get Carolina, who we just saw get steamrolled by Josh Jacobs for 3 scores, then Leonard Fournette flattens them for 2, with Ronald Jones also pounding one in. If there's a week, then it's like this week. There's very few matchups I'd really want to do that. Bye weeks, it might make sense and things of that nature. But this early on, that could be a potential play, yes. Jake, I enjoyed this week. Lost MT, AJ Brown. Everyone laughed at me. They're not laughing after week 2's injuries. It was an absolute bloodbath, man. You never root for injuries, though. So, it absolutely sucks. Moss killed me yesterday, only up 5 right now. An opponent has Carlson, Las Vegas kicker left. Oh, let's hope for less than 5 for you, Mitchell. I don't know what Moss ended up doing. I thought he caught a touchdown. They must have called it back. It sucks. I don't know who the other option was, but that blows. Sell James Robinson high. I mean, I like James. I wouldn't not take feelers for him. If you're getting like wide receiver 2 value, yeah. I mean, especially if a Saquon team is needy, a Christian McCaffrey team needs a fill-in, I'd take a gauge and see what you can get for him. High-end wide receiver 3, fair for sure. But I'm not sprinting to get away. I think the guy does look really, really good, and the team is clearly happy with what they're seeing. I'm a Jets fan. Should I leave for 5 minutes and come back? I know the Gase and the Jets aren't NFL caliber. They certainly aren't. So I didn't see this comment. I think I've already completely buried them. But yeah, they suck. We got Barrowman to replace him, though. Oh, man. Fucking joke of a franchise. Absolute joke. Watching Robbie A go fucking nuts here. Missed the beginning. Thoughts on CMC? I believe he'll beat 4 to 6 timeline. I think it's kind of like Mike Clay. Mike Thomas, right? Like these ballers just can get it together and gut it out. So I think my guess, just completely uneducated and just gut feeling, 3 weeks. That's what I'm thinking. The meantime, Gibson, Robinson, Hines, Dobbins, Madison, grab Mike Davis, try for a trade, have Kittle and Jonnu. I mean, you can get something for like a Kittle and a running back package and get yourself like a top end running back. That never hurts. But you got good depth. Like you don't need to sprint. I'm kind of in a similar position where I have like McKinnon, Josh Kelly, Gibson, a handful of these, and alongside Kenyon Drake. So I have like a nice 4 running back stable that I'm not going to go below $50 on the waiver wire just to get Mike Davis because he's my direct backup. I think Davis is going to be a really good fill-in. Like I would try to grab him for sure. I think he's going to be a nice immediate RB2 plug and play for 4 weeks or however long you have him. But you also aren't in a position where you have to go sprint. I mean, Gibson and Robinson I feel good about, but behind them, it is kind of sketchy with Hines now being a joke. So yeah, I would make sure I get Davis, and if I didn't, I would try to swing a trade, Mike. N'Keal Harry or Golden Tate better long play? I mean, you saw Harry, and we got Harry here from Mitchell Chavez. I agree. I like Harry long term. especially seeing Cam sling it out. Now that offense might be a maddening one to go after because ultimately, they're going to run it when they can run it. If they can run it 40 times a week, they're going to do that. But you can see the potential when they have to pass as well, almost 400 passing yards for Cam too. So it's going to be very game flow for N'Keal, but the dude is 10th in the league in targets, 10th in expected fantasy point. I mean, he's playing. He's playing for real. James Robinson legit? I think so. I really do think James Robinson's legit. I should have had him as a riser here. Forgot that name to throw in there. Let me add him to my list of make sure I cover on the website. But James Robinson looks like a player. Reads his block well, plays with power, can catch the ball. I'm feeling pretty good about him. Only have 5 bench spots, so have to be real smart. I could see you cutting Hines for Davis, Mike. I could definitely see that. Jay Kelly Davis or Devontae. You must mean Devontae Freeman because I can't imagine Devontae Adams is sitting there. If it's for long term, Josh Kelly's my play. If it's I own McCaffrey, I need a guaranteed 15 touches for the next 4 weeks, it's Mike Davis. But Kelly is the better guy to see long-term value, in my opinion. I have Montgomery. Do you think I could get either Dobbins or Gibson for him? And which one would you prefer? I don't think you're selling high enough if that's where you're aiming, because I think most people view Dobbins and Gibson below Montgomery right now. And while I'd rather have either one of the exciting rookies, I don't know I want to sell 20 guaranteed touches right now for hypothetical in the future 20 touches. I think you got to be aiming higher if you're selling Montgomery. That's kind of selling low off of fresh performance. That's not what I would think. Still put up 181 with Hines in the lineup. That's pretty beastly, Mike. Struck gold last year on waiver wire with McLaurin after week 1. He is a monster. T.Y. said he had a massive tear in his calf last year. And what's it this year? What's the excuse this year, T.Y.? Drop T.Y. for Henderson. If you need a running back, I mean, it's not without question, but it's T.Y. Hilton, right? Like, he's got to get it together until he doesn't. And then you're just like, why didn't I do it? I mean, I'll give you the okay. I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, hammer that. But if you do it, okay. Paul gargling. That's how Gaze has a job. Yes, definitely gargling. And he's a good one at that. Kyle Tunenberg, he drops a 44-yard T. I'm a Colts fan. Start T.Y. in your flex. He won't be in the slump. Okay, so he dropped a big play. I did not see that. So that's good to know. Corey Wilkes, I hope so. I have T.Y. as well. Green, no panic on Mixon. Here's a big comment covering up my face. Zach Taylor needs to get it together. Only non-garbage TD drive was the one Mixon was targeted. Yeah, that's a great point, right? The one time they moved that ball was when they were targeting him. You can't have the number 1 pick drop back 60 times and get teed off constantly. Need to work Mixon in and open up Burrow play action. Totally agree with all your points here. Prioritize these running backs. Kelly, McKinnon, Davis. I don't know if you're saying what order. I think I go McKinnon because of the weak, streamability right up there with the Davis and Kelly. But then also, I think long-term, McKinnon has the highest value. So I go McKinnon, Kelly, Davis, unless I need that immediate Christian McCaffrey fill-in. Then I go McKinnon, Davis, Kelly. But I love all three. Try to get them. Triv Tello, great seeing you. What kind of trades have you seen for C-Mac? Is a Hill Montgomery offer too much? No, get rid of that. See, that's where you want to trade Montgomery, is if you can package him and a receiver. I mean, tell me, though, are you 2-0? Are you in a position to buy low? Because if you're 0-2 and trying to get cute and trade for McCaffrey, that's not a play. Is John Brown a must start now? I mean, he already was pretty much there. It would depend on who you have. But, yeah, I mean, he's right about there. Love your work, bro. Much respect, Jack. Much respect to you, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in always. I have Jonnu, so bench Ingram. Yeah, I think if you have that as your option, then yes, you can bench Ingram. Craig, thanks for the reminder there. I want to trade Julio. I'm stacked at wide receiver and need depth. Get it on it. This is a bad week to trade him, though. What do you have, like 28 yards, 30 yards? You don't want to sell low. Wait for him to have that, 170, 2 TD day. It's probably going to come within the next week or two. So unless somebody's chomping at the bit to get Julio and not buying low, I'd wait till he blows up. 128 in passing for Breeze, not bad, solid. 3.7 points for Moss. Other option was Gibson. We felt better with the matchup. Yeah, I see the logic there. The touchdowns, we hadn't seen it from Gibson. Sorry about it, though, bro. I never like getting them wrong. What to do with Allen Robinson? Grab a bucket and puke? I mean, not feeling good about anything tied to Trubisky, but last year you could at least get it done, and we're not seeing that right now. The squeaky wheel didn't get greased. I think you hold. And if you don't own, I'd like to buy low on him. He's going to get this together. I think it's a hold for sure. Not looking to trade Julio for Robinson. I have both. I would much rather have Julio for sure. Henderson, McKinnon, or Kelly, better pick up off waivers. I got McKinnon, Russell as my highest for the week. Had Jay Kelly and D Swift as other options too. Just unfortunately chose the one dud. Yeah. Hate when that happens, man. It sucks, but I appreciate the kind words after the fact here. Jonnu or Goddard rest of season for Cheese Fantasy. Love you, Cheese. I go Jonnu personally. I mean, clear just the number 2, maybe even number 1 when AJ Brown's out. So I'm into Goddard for sure. Into Jonnu over Goddard for sure, in my opinion. It's all good, man. Always appreciate the insight and help. Love it. I appreciate that. See you tomorrow, Mike. You're the man too, brother. Always appreciate you guys showing up here for the show. And last one here, I have Beckham, Ridley, Hollywood. Who would you package with Montgomery? Probably get more for Ridley. I wouldn't want to trade Ridley. He's kind of untouchable in my opinion. Let me give you some quick Ridley juju to not have you ever think about it. Obviously 109 and 2 TDs. Anytime he's seen 8 targets in his games, 7, 146 and 3 TDs, 671, 1 TD, 9, 893, 1 TD, 8, 105, 1 TD, 588, 1 TD, 8, 153, 1 TD, 685, 1 TD, 8 for 91, 9 for 130 and 2, and 7 for 109 and 2. I mean, all he does is ball out when he sees 8 targets, Craig. Do not, I will come through the screen and backhand you if you trade Ridley. No, not happening. Beckham, though, name value, fresh off a TD, run heavy offense, sell him with Montgomery all day. Let me know what you can get for him. Hit me in those DMs and we'll make sure to get something good for you. Would you drop Sony Michel and N'Keal Harry, Preston Williams for any of the waiver wires? Yeah, I dropped Sony first. He's on my cut list. Fuck Sony. Awful. Useless. Wouldn't hate, Preston if it's one of the big names, the McKinnons, yeah, too. But Sony would be my first one for sure. Alrighty, guys. That is your week 2 recap, and what a fucking crazy week 2 it was. Thank you so much for tuning in, Wolfpack. Always a pleasure being able to recap these games with you. If you're on the podcast, Fantasy Fullback Dive, we pave your path to 2020 titles. Thanks so much. Consider coming to the live show next time so you can ask your questions, get your team customized answers. But you can find all our content at rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves. I personally am at RotoStreetWolf on Twitter. Always answering your DMs and questions. Until next week, week 3, Wolfpack. Hope you squeeze out all your week 2 wins here on Monday Night Football. And let's go dominate in week 3. Wolfpack, I am out.